what can we do to minimize the impact of taxes? The conversations that we've had with clients is their frustration with their accounting team is they tell us that I owe $250,000 for on April 15th. And then the client will say, well, is that good? Should I owe 300,000? And they ticked a lot of buttons to make me only owe 250, or can I only owe 100? There's no real planning that's going into them. So our job is to really we want to really help people maximize their net worth while minimizing the impact of taxes. And we think the best way to do that is a one-stop shop, to have a meeting with your personal team and your business team, getting together in the same room and creating a cohesive strategy that stretches across both the business and the personal life to be able to really affect their lives.
Welcome to Sterling Insights, Stand Out and Supercharge Your Assets, the go-to podcast for financial advisors aiming to grow their assets under management, stand out in a crowded market, and retain assets nearly forever. Are you advising high net worth clients who own appreciated capital assets? Do you want to help them sell without losing a quarter, a third, or even more of their hard-earned profits to capital gains taxes? Then this podcast is tailored for you. Each episode brings you the latest strategies and expert advice from leading financial advisors, seasoned attorneys, and experienced CPAs. Learn how to maximize your clients' wealth, minimize their taxes, and supercharge your advisory practice with actionable insights. Join us on Sterling Insights, Stand Out and Supercharge Your Assets, where you'll gain the knowledge and tools to set yourself apart and achieve unparalleled success in wealth management. Subscribe now and empower your practice for a brighter, more prosperous future. Welcome to Sterling Insights, Stand Out and Supercharge Your Assets. I'm your host, Roger Silk. Today, our guest is Brian Carney. Brian is a partner and co-founder of RiversEdge Advisors. Brian has over 2 decades of experience in the financial services world. In addition to the technical side, he's very passionate about the emotional side of financial planning, particularly working with clients. Brian designed Rivers Edges to help clients navigate the often overlooked emotional aspects of financial decision-making. Brian, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you being here.
Roger, thank you so much for having me on.
We were chatting just before about your real desire in life is to work with clients and not to do maybe as many other things. Can you talk a minute about that?
Yeah, so I've been in this career since the week before September 11th. And the thing I've learned over the 20 plus years I've been doing this, I really enjoy working and sitting with clients to talk about their financial needs. What are they trying to actually accomplish? And I feel like this industry has a tendency to really lean heavy on the math side of the equation. And I have a business partner that handles that part. So I really like to talk about why people feel a certain way about money and why they make decisions about money. The math always has to be there, but we could come up with the greatest math answer for something, for a strategy for a client. But if it doesn't feel right to them, it's not right for them. So we need to come up with and understand that a little bit better. So that's where I really enjoy spending my time.
What does a typical client, or maybe even better, an ideal client look like for you, Brian?
Yeah, we have an expertise in really 2 areas. The first area is business owners and entrepreneurs, where we really like to deal with complicated issues where you have a business owner that is making some money and really trying to figure out what's the exit plan for their business. Are they going to sell it? Are they going to hand it to generation 2? Do they need to sell it in order to have a successful retirement? And the second area is what we consider high net worth individuals. And that definition varies depending on where you look, but we typically see that as high income earning individuals or families that have a net worth of somewhere between $1 and $15 million.
All right, I see. And your business owners, are they typically, most of their net worth is in the business until they sell?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because we own a business. We can really relate to that. my net worth may look great on paper, but I can't tap the business equity all the time like an ATM machine. So yeah, most of the time the largest asset that our clients have is their business.
I once had a guy show me a, personal balance sheet, and he showed a net worth of $1,060,000. And 1 million of it was the business.
And that's not too uncommon. It really is. It looks great for balance sheet purposes, but to actually live your life and you can't really spend that. So it does create its challenges.
So, and among your client base, so you can say the business is worth any number, but
Sure.
when you want to go to sell it, the market's going to say, well, we think it's worth this. How do you guys, as a firm, as an advisory firm, talk to your clients about thinking realistically about what their business is worth to a buyer?
It's really interesting because I think this is a real good similarity is when someone's trying to sell their house and they'll say, my house is worth $1 million. And a real estate agent may say, no, it's not. It's worth 600,000 just because you put $300,000 into having a great basement and an awesome pool with a great, a deck and whatnot. That doesn't necessarily make it worth that much. So that I really think that really plays itself well to that emotional side. If you work with a number of business owners, you know that they're extremely emotionally attached to their business. It is in some instances one of their kids. It is, it's been their entire life and they may think that it's worth significantly more than it really is. Getting them to understand in reality what the business is worth may not be what they think it's worth. It's really more what someone's willing to offer them for it.
Brian, would it be possible, obviously, without talking about any client confidential information,
Yeah.
take maybe a case and we can kind of kick it around and you can say how you view it, maybe how the client viewed it, and then how you worked with them so that they could view it in a more realistic way and eventually achieve what they're really trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think that's definitely doable. Try to think of an example off the top of my head. I actually have, it's kind of interesting. I have a client that goes the opposite way. Anytime we do his financial planning, he says, assume my business is worth $1. And it is a classic business. It's recurring revenue. It's what every private equity firm or a competitor or, a roll-up would love to have. It is constant, steady business, steady clients, and he has a long track record. And, having your business be worth not nearly as much as you think can sort of do you the same amount of disservice as going too far the other way. What we've tried to do with him is we say, look, let's try to get you to be financially independent outside of having to sell the business. And we've really focused on creating strategies for him, installing retirement plans that are sophisticated, really trying to get him to save a lot of money to really capture a lot of his cash flow. And we've gotten him to a point where he could be successful to retire without actually having to sell his business. That's a pretty cool story where, anything, if he sells his company, if it's worth more than $1, it's gravy to him. Right.
Uh-huh.
Let's go to the flip side. Yeah.
So when you do look at it, you look at owner earnings, EBITDA, EBIT. What do you look at? Or all those things, or asset value? What do you look at?
Yeah, it's a great question. And one of the things that we did over the past couple of years is we added a tax and advisory component to it. So we now have a certified business valuation specialist on our team, and we're not always doing a full-blown analysis for what the business is worth. There's a great software out there called Riser, RISR, and it helps you get a fair value of what the business looks like and what it could be worth. So when we run that scenario for the gentleman we talked about, we're using the numbers through the analysis. We always talk in terms of multiples, trying to really increase that EBITDA, give us a runway of 5 years so we can help you really increase that EBITDA. And if we help you increase that EBITDA, it takes your multiple from 3 to 4.5. Well, that could be hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. And that's where we really think that you can really impact the lives of a business owner. I know it sounds really kind of cliche and maybe a little bit outlandish, but we truly believe we can totally impact and affect the trajectory of our clients' lives by just giving them simple strategies to employ.
If I'm not asking you to give away the store,
Yeah.
can you give us like a rough outline of like, so somebody comes to you and they're already a client and it's like, okay, Brian, in 5 years, I want my EBITDA to go from X to what, 2X?
Yeah, sure.
That's doable. So how, you say, okay, obviously you're not going to just tell them here, but
Right.
how do you
So
think about that?
we actually have two gentlemen on staff that have exited their company twice. One is now the CEO of our company. He exited a digital marketing firm, and he's an accountant by trade, which is super helpful, as you might imagine. One of the first places that we start with our business owners is helping them, A, get organized, and B, really understand their numbers. There is often times where we deal with our business owners, and a lot of people that work with business owners, I hate to bring up Shark Tank, right? But they always say know your numbers. It doesn't surprise me, but it maybe it should, how few business owners truly understand the ins and outs of their numbers. If you talk to a lot of business owners, I would say a large percentage of them don't actually know what buttons they can toggle to be able to make their business more profitable and really get super focused on really increasing that EBITDA and sort of helping that multiple down the road. So that's the first place we start. Organization and understanding what's going on. And then really just trying to help them come up with strategies that can really impact the value of their business. It certainly depends on what the situation is, but one of the things that we've helped people with in the past is say, hey, you've got a super over concentration to one client. We need to help you get off of that. We need to help you find more clients. Your value is nowhere near where it could be because I'm making this number up. 70% of your revenue is coming from client X. Well, we need to really help you figure out how do you expand your network, and how do you find more clients to be able to help lower that percentage. That would be an example of something that we would help them with.
And then they would say to you, well, I can imagine them saying to you, Brian, yeah, I know, but how do I get that other, get me three, four other guys like this, and then they'll only be 20%.
Yeah, right, exactly. Having our business advisory team that can really dig into the numbers and can really help them figure out where are areas that you can push and pull in order to be able to drive that profitability up. One of the things that you always have to talk about is, in addition to where your clients come from, what does your overhead look like? You know, I'll speak for us right now. We have a very large office. We have 17,000 square feet. We have 19 people. If we were going to market right now, that's certainly going to act as an anchor. So
Right.
we would go to and talk about, hey, why don't we look for a different space? Is there a way we can sublease this? Is there a way that we can sort of help reduce the impact of that? And really try to drive that overhead down in certain areas. So we're really trying to help the business owner understand what toggles they can push and pull on to really become more profitable.
So basically, the way I learned to think about it is obviously very, very high level of abstraction. You can increase your revenues, and you can decrease your costs. You can only decrease costs so much, right? You can't cut your way to growth really in
True.
99.9% of the cases.
Yep.
And so unless they're really bloated, which probably not, there's not that much you can do on the cost side usually. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. And actually, I was talking to someone yesterday who is in our space, who is in M&A and in the wealth management space. And he actually went as far to say is, if a firm is too profitable, maybe their profit margin in our space is 50 or 60%, they actually look at that as a bad thing because they're not reinvesting as much back into the business. So it's kind of odd to hear someone say that, but that was their take. And it actually makes a lot of sense. It's sort of like if you have 300 clients and you only have 5 people managing them, that's not a real great opportunity for the person that's looking to purchase you, right? They're going to have to throw a bunch of money into talent to be able to help service the clients if the client service people are going to exit out. So yeah, I think this space is really kind of part art, kind of part science, where you have to find that sweet spot. I think you nailed it. You can't cut your way to profitability.
So talking about the space that you're in, so we've talked a lot about you work with business owners, kind of helping them work on their businesses. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yep, I think we have two sides. We work on their business, and then we can help them see how we help them with their business impacts their personal financial plan. So have one
Right,
place to do both of it.
right. So do you basically aim to be a one-stop shop for all of their financial planning related needs?
Yeah, I think the reason we started our tax and advisory firm from scratch is I think the accounting model is broken. The public accounting model is broken. And what I mean by that is I think that many accounting firms are suffering through lack of talent going into that space right now. Number one. Number two, I think they're handcuffed by having to do 600, 700, 800 tax returns. So I think that there's a real lack of forward planning for business owners. They don't sit down with their accountant a couple of times a year and talk about, what can we do to minimize the impact of taxes? The conversations that we've had with clients is their frustration with their accounting team is they tell us that I owe $250,000 on April 15th. And then the client will say, well, is that good? Should I owe 300,000? And they ticked a lot of buttons to make me only owe 250, or can I only owe 100? There's no real planning that's going into them. So our job is to really we want to really help people maximize their net worth while minimizing the impact of taxes. And we think the best way to do that is a one-stop shop. To have a meeting with your personal team and your business team, getting together in the same room and creating a cohesive strategy that stretches across both the business and their personal life to be able to really affect their lives.
I think it says that you guys have, I think I read that you have about 300 million under management. Does that sound about right?
It's about 730 now.
Okay. I guess somebody's website is not up to date.
Yeah.
So, and that's liquid AUM. That's investment assets of your clients.
Correct. Yeah. It includes retirement plans as well.
Retirement plans and all that. And then
that's right.
The value of the businesses would be not counted in that number.
That's correct. Yep.
Have you ever looked at that, what you think that number is?
No, we haven't. We actually just had a conversation yesterday about having, as part of our review process, kind of keeping right now, if we do a financial plan for a business owner on the personal planning side, we would say, hey, Roger, what do you think your business is worth? And they'll say, $7 million. Okay, great. And we just use it as a placeholder in their net worth statement. With the addition of the tax team, I think we're actually going to be able to have a more official, like, hey, send us your P&Ls. We'll let our tax team run an analysis and give you here's what ballpark of what we think your business is worth. So we can have a more accurate number. One of our favorite things to do with our business owner clients is to show them what their net worth has grown, how it's grown every year since they've been working with us. Previous to the tax firm, we would literally just put whatever number in that they said, if they told us that's what it was worth. So now to have a more strategic way to do it, I think that's a really great idea. It would be really cool to see, hey, we work with X amount of business owners and we think those businesses are worth 3, 4, 5, $600 million or whatever the number is. I think that's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, and obviously we're happy to chat with you about that outside of the podcast right here, but you heard me on that webinar, and we do and get involved, and especially in the exit, helping not to have to pay as much tax on the exit, which is probably the vast majority of these people, if they don't do it right, that's a third of their life just went up in smoke because they didn't do their exit tax planning properly.
It's so true. And the one thing that is sort of a universal law that I've learned over the last 20 some years in this business is that no matter what the number is, people don't want to pay taxes. Right? They don't want to pay more in taxes they don't pay $1 more than they have to. They're fine paying what they have to, but if there's strategies that you can employ to minimize that impact, everyone would prefer that. We always say it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep after taxes are taken into consideration. So I totally agree with you.
But as you probably also, I'd be interested in your experience. My experience is the time to start having that discussion is even years in advance of the exit.
Yep. I think people will ask us, when's the best time to start planning for an exit? And we always say for a business owner, it's now. Whether you want to exit in 10 years, 15 years, or 3, the longer the runway you can give us, the better outcome we can create for you. The worst is a fire drill, where someone says, and this is one of the things we talk a lot about to our business owners, is we say, you have to be prepared for your phone to ring and someone to give you an offer that you're not expecting. And you need to know, A, is that a good number? And B, would you take it? So if you don't give us enough time to be able to create that runway, we can't there's just sometimes you don't have the ability to impact and to really help with those minimization strategies.
It's all very interesting stuff, Brian, and I'd love to talk to you about it some more.
Yeah,
I want to hear more about the emotional side of things, though, because we've been kind of talking about technical stuff.
sure. I find business ownership personally to be an extremely emotional. The highs are high and the lows are low. You know, it is, there's days that I feel like I'm the greatest person in the world and I'm puffing out my chest, pounding on it every day, and every emotion in between. If you take that life cycle or that journey of entrepreneurship and you start talking about the exit process, you take those emotions and just amplify them by 10 to 20 to 30x. And even just the emotion of going through, it is a very, very emotional time when you're trying to exit. And we really want to have people that have been there, have done that, have gone through it, and have can actually counsel you on the feelings like, hey, this is normal. You're going to feel despair. You're going to feel hope. You're going to get to inside the 20-yard line and then you're going to have an issue. You're going to have to wait it out. So that I think being able to provide even just a sounding board, someone to talk to that's been there, so the entrepreneur doesn't feel like they're going through this alone and they're the only person that's ever gone through it, can be extremely valuable for them.
Are there some emotions that you would say essentially all sellers
Yeah, I think there is a time period where there's this just like eternal optimism, and that can flip on a dime and become eternal pessimism. Like, what the heck am I even doing this for? I don't even like these guys. I still like my job. So it is really trying to keep them focused on the outcome. Why did we start this in the first place? There is a reason you decided to take your entire life's work and put it for sale.
right? And so
And
somebody, is it the case that somebody sees some number but basically looks really big and
I,
they get excited? Then they
yeah,
get to the process and there's due diligence and there's what about this and there's criticism and then why am I doing this? Why do I need this?
and it can be an enormous source of frustration for them. If they think their business is worth 20 million and someone says, "Hey, you're going to get 20 million dollars," and they start going through the due diligence and they go, "Oh, we got to ding you a million here, we got to ding you 2 million here," and all of a sudden the business is worth 11. That's a very deflating process. That is a very deflating feeling.
And would you say that's more common than not?
I think there's this magic number that everyone has in their head that if I get this number, that's sort of like I did an awesome job. Now, oftentimes people will get more than that number, but I think there's a period of time where that you're going to have to go down below the number that you expected and then potentially hope to figure out how to get it back up. But yeah, I think there's a large percentage of people that go through this experience that forget that this is a negotiation. You know, just because someone tells you your business isn't worth 20 million doesn't mean they're right. You know, so you have to have your strategy and your advisors and your team in place to be able to say, and you have to be willing to walk away. You know, the worst
Uh,
time to sell a business is when you have to. So I think, you know, being able to get it sounds obnoxious, but you need a team of people to be able to make sure that you know exactly what your business is worth.
a conversation that you mentioned earlier that you're a certified exit planning analyst. So is that what SEPA stands for?
Advisor, certified exit plan
Advisor.
advisor. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I've talked with a lot of people in that area, and what I hear happens all too often is a guy, and it's usually a guy. I'm not saying it always is. I mean, we certainly have business owners who are women, but I think the guys may be more like this. They don't want to think about it. They love, they're married to their business and they might be 78 years old, but they feel like they're, 60.
Yep.
And so they just sort of put their head in the sand that God forbid something could go wrong. And all of a sudden the business is worth half.
Yep.
How do you guys handle it? So you're shaking your head. How do you handle it? How do you prepare and try to protect your clients from that unintentional self-defeating behavior?
I think it's really our role to be able to have difficult conversations with people. And I think when you start talking about legacy with business owners, most of the time that will resonate. I think you really have to get them to sort of pull their head out of the sand and say, what are you still doing here? Like, why are you actually still working? One of the things that I've noticed is that one of the most difficult parts about an exit for an owner is what are they going to do now that every day's Saturday? It is a part of them dies when they sell. It has been their identity for most of them for decades. So we really have to understand, and this goes back to that behavioral component. Why are you still working? You know, if it's not about the money and you need someplace to go from 9 to 5, I used to work with a gentleman who said he was going to retire, and his wife said, as long as you leave by 9 and come back after 5, you can do it. And I do think there is a certain component to that. I'm just going to work because it's what I've always done. So when you start talking about taking someone's life's work and diminishing the value of it, I do think that sometimes resonates with people and how they're shooting themselves in the foot by sticking around. Hey,
Right.
you really need to bring in G2 to be able to figure this out. Most of the time, they'll let you hang around for a while. If you still want to work, they're happy to have you.
Right.
You're just not
Yeah.
going to call all the shots anymore.
Yeah. So I know you guys said his business is worth $1, but not on an EBITDA multiple basis.
Yeah.
Well, what would you say that like maybe the kind of the size range of EBITDA that you guys work with is, or the multiple of
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. I would say on the low end, we actually, interestingly enough, had dental practices that are exiting, right? And I'll kind of
Uh-huh.
talk a little bit about why they're doing that because I think it's translatable in other areas, but they're not getting huge multiples. They're getting 1.5, 2 times maybe, right? Because someone has to come in and do the procedures. On other businesses, we're looking at somewhere between 3 and 10 is really what we've seen. I would say sort of in that middle, like 3 to 6-ish is where we've really seen some home runs. Now, we had a gentleman who exited at the end of the day after everything, who was in the insurance space, and he exited for over 20 times.
20 times the EBITDA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After, rollbacks were, leaving the equity behind and getting a second bite of the apple, all of that. If you added all of that up, his first one was 14.
Yeah. Still pretty healthy.
Very healthy. Yep.
Yeah. And then what are those? Because one part of what I'm asking is there are a lot of, and maybe single professional practices might be particularly like this, where they're basically high paying jobs.
That's right. Yeah. Not to, I don't want to come across like I'm bashing the accounting space, but if you look at some of the exits that have been done at local or regional accounting practices, they're leaving for like 1 times revenue, 1.5 times revenue. That's the exit for what we've seen in our area. Now it could be different, depending on where you are in the country, of course. But you're right. It's sort of like, hey, we have a high paying job, but the business is actually not worth a whole lot.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
totally agree with that thought.
And is some fraction of your clients like that?
I think there is some fraction of it. And the conversation with them is slightly different. And that conversation is, do you keep having control and owning a high paying job? Or are you so fed up that you have to get out that you just want to become a salary employee and make less money?
Right.
And I think that's where that decision point comes for those type of people.
Right.
Because it's
But
not going to be, in most cases, in that type of an example, it's not going to be life altering money or life changing money for your smaller practices that are going to exit for like 1 or 2 times.
yeah, like for an example, I don't know if this is an example, but I know a guy, an MD, family practice doctor, and because of the changing rules, regulations, whatever, he basically had to sell,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't get that much, $1 million maybe,
Right.
and he still works there, and
Yeah.
now he has a salary. Is that not too uncommon?
Not too uncommon. You talk about the medical field. That's exactly what happens there. Medicine as a business is fascinating as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, you see that happen regularly. And that, going back to the dentists that we were talking about, it's exactly what happened with them. And the reason our dentists exited, they loved practicing dentistry. They hated running a dental practice.
Uh-huh.
So they said, you know what? This is someone else's problem. I'm going to come in and I'm going to do procedures. I'm going to work with patients and I'm going to leave at 5 o'clock. And none of this is my problem. I don't have to deal with insurance companies anymore. I'm just going to do a root canal and I'm going to go home. And I think that has really been one of the reasons that we've seen a lot of our clients exit is they just said, I like my job. I just don't get to spend much time doing the thing that I like because I'm running a business and not
Right.
practicing in the area that I like.
And how much is it the case, Brian, that the ideal buyer for a seller like that is the opposite? Like loves to run a business, hates to fill teeth or whatever it is.
Yeah. And the dental world is tricky, but I think there's a lot of people that are really good at running companies. And I don't know that it necessarily matters what type of company. They're just really good at being very proficient in business,
Right, but most of them probably aren't that good at filling teeth.
Exactly. So if you can become a operator of a business and not actually have to get your hands dirty by filling teeth, I think there is a real component that can be a win-win for a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, look, we're under the same situation. We brought on a CEO over the last year to really come in and what I found is that running the business became more than a full-time job. And it was something that I didn't love doing every day. I didn't really love having to do performance reviews with employees or deal with payroll or deal with, negotiating leases. I really enjoy working with clients. So did I want to sell the business? No, I didn't. But I did want to bring someone on to run the company. I always made the joke when I was building my company that I always wanted to own a firm, but not run a firm. And I said that
Uh-huh.
years before I started my own practice. And man, was I right about that.
And that's where you are now, right? You
That
still own it.
I still own it. Yep. So yeah, we gave some equity to the now CEO to be able to run it. But
Uh-huh.
so now I have two partners, and I am just so excited to be back working exclusively with clients and helping them.
And you sound like it. I mean, totally comes through in talking to you.
Yeah, if
You're
you
excited
saw
about what you're doing.
Yeah, and if you saw me a year ago, you could see me. Some days I walked into work like I had to be there. I would come home to my wife and I would say, I was in meetings all day and I wasn't in one that I enjoyed. I
Mhm.
wasn't passionate or energetic about it. You can sort of tell when I get energetic about something and talking to people and going to find new clients, I get really energetic about it. Talking about budgeting, it's just
Yeah. Brian, unfortunately, we're running out of time here. I want to ask you a couple more questions. Is there something that you'd like to share with our audience that we haven't gotten a chance to do that yet?
I think nothing in particular, but I think the world of business owners, I think there's such an opportunity to create an experience that's different than their typical experience when they've dealt with their accounting and financial professionals. And I am super passionate about creating that one-stop model where they can sit and talk about their woes with their business and their hopes and dreams on the personal side. I always tell a business owner, you have one pair of pants with two pockets. You have a business owner pocket and you have a personal pocket. We just want to effectively and efficiently help you take money from your business pocket and put it in your personal pocket in order to achieve your personal goals. I think it is really a different experience than most business owners have gone through. I know what it's like to run a company. I know that it's not for me. So I know some of the frustrations that the business owner is having. I know some of the reasons why they've looked at exit. So it's been a really exciting thing for us to go through and to be able to provide that experience for our business owner clients.
Brian, with all your success, what would you say is your biggest challenge right now?
I would say it this way. So when they talk about assets under management in a financial services firm or a wealth management firm, there's a gentleman called Michael Kitces, Kitces. He's sort of like the guru in our space. Every
Uh-huh.
financial advisor pretty much has heard of him. He always makes the joke that the first 100 million is easy, the second 100 million is hard. And to compound on that, as you continue to grow, you unlock problems that you never possibly could have expected before. So growth has challenges along the way. It's kind of like raising a kid, right? Again, I'm really into analogies. And so I have three kids, 16, 15, 13. And your business is like your kids, is as they've become teenagers, just like my company has, or getting close to being a teenager, the problems become bigger and more serious, right? So as I've gone from 5 employees to 19, it hasn't gotten to a point where I know exactly what to expect every day. It's sort of like, I probably should have seen that coming, but I didn't. Growth just creates different issues, and you have to be ready to tackle those. And you have to realize, like, man, that is something I didn't see coming, but I have to deal with it now. So growth is not without pain. And, just because you have 19 employees doesn't mean that you're making a whole lot more money, right? Mm-hmm. You might be working more and dealing with bigger issues and still not making the same amount or less oftentimes.
Yeah, I hear you. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It means, among other things, you have 19 other people to worry about.
That's right. Yeah. And obviously, multiple personalities, multiple different generations. It's a very interesting thing to deal with.
Yeah. Interesting.
For sure.
Yeah. Brian, who do you know who might also be a good guest for us?
What type of people do you want to talk to?
People in and around the financial management business, the advisory business, people who are doing AUM, who are dealing with exits, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. I think there's a great gentleman I know. His name is Steve Erfel, E-R-F-L-E. We actually went to college together and we're in a study group together. And he runs a really successful firm that is, I think has like $1.2 billion or $1.3 billion under management outside of Philadelphia. Super interesting guy, great basketball player for what that's worth. He's working with a lot of those clients as well.
I think the bank gives you 100 cents per dollar if you're a basketball player or if you're not.
That's right. Yeah. Fair point. Fair point.
Anyone else come to mind?
I'm sure I can think of someone. It'll probably hit me at like 6 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, sure. We'll catch up with you on it.
Okay.
Brian, where can our audience go to learn more about you?
So our website is RiversEdgeAdvisors.com. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Brian Carney on LinkedIn.
Okay, so
from the great state of Delaware. If you just Google Brian Carney, Delaware, I should pop up.
Rivers Edge. So the best ways people look for you on LinkedIn, Brian Carney, Delaware, or Brian Carney, Rivers Edge.
And my email address is bcarney@RiversEdgeAdvisors.com.
Okay, RiversEdgeAdvisors.com, all one word. We'll put it in the show notes.
Thank you so much, Roger. Appreciate it.
I very much appreciate having you on. It was very interesting, and I'm sorry we don't have a lot more time.
Yeah, great to talk to you. Thanks for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Sterling Insights, Stand Out and Supercharge Your Assets, where we provide the info you need from successful leading financial advisors, lawyers, and CPAs. Your hosts, Roger and Catherine Silk, invite you to learn more about Sterling Foundation Management by visiting sterlingfoundations.com.